access line, what do we mean by an access line? Who can describe or define that for me? What's an access line? A line to access the tree, okay? What does it do? Like maybe an SRT line? It's something to get you up in the air. It's something to make it more efficient, get you started, get you off the ground. We don't have to hit the highest tie-in point, we just need to get up into the crown. Because once we're up in the crown, we're probably going to adjust that tie-in point anyway. Who's ever been up in the tree and you thought to yourself, oh, that's where I want to be tied in? And you get up there and you go, no, that's not what I want at all. Turns out I need to be over there. And if I put 40 minutes into throwing and shooting and all this effort trying to get that one perfect tie-in, and I get up there and it finds out, oops, I need to be over there, I've wasted a huge amount of time. So Carson's hit a reasonable tie-in in the center of the tree. I realized they were dealing with a 30-foot tree in a trade show. Work with us a little bit here. He's got an access line. He's going to base anchor this. And we use stationary rope. Who uses stationary rope climbing? Who, keep your hands up, who also uses, other hand, moving rope climbing? Right on. If anybody is in the I only world, I only use, I want you to think of a carpenter who only has a hammer. And he comes to a light switch and needs to make a repair. And he starts hammering. Stationary rope, moving rope, two different tools in your toolkit. They have different advantages and disadvantages. So an access line enables us to ascend efficiently. What else can we do on an access line? Rescue, right, rescue. So who's had aerial rescue training? Okay, legit honesty question. Who has practiced aerial rescue in the last quarter? Smaller group. Smaller group. So if you haven't practiced aerial rescue in the last quarter, I'd like you to go back to your companies on Monday and say, hey, we probably ought to refresh our aerial rescue skills. We haven't done this in a while. But an access line can be a source of rescue or a resource in our rescue. But what do we have to do with that access line in order for it to be available? We got to leave it in place. So what you're going to notice is as Carson puts his gear on here, he's actually going to take a second line with him up in the tree. Craziness. Using two ropes in one tree. It's okay, it's okay. You can do it. We leave that line in place. One, it's more efficient to get up there. Two, I can come rescue him or another climber on the job site can rescue him. Another thing you can do with an access line, you'll see us do it at the end, is you can come down it. When might you come down out of the tree? Say it again. When might you come down out of the tree? There's a really obvious answer to this. Lunch! No, wait a minute. Who takes lunch in this room? What kind of tough guys are you eating lunch on the job? You probably drank water too. Yeah, right. I worked with a guy who only drank coffee. I love coffee, but I don't know how you do that. But yeah, the obvious answer I thought you were going to say is when you're done with the work. That's a great time to come down. And Carson, why don't you throw your gear on and head. Wait, is there something you want to do before you climb? He's installed his access line. He can visually inspect the tie-in point. Is there anything else we might do before he climbs? Say it again. Test it. Heck of an idea. How are we going to test this? So a two-person static load, right? Yes. Ooh, that felt so good. We're not trying to break this, right? We're not bouncing on it. We're not trying to see if we can fail that tie-in point. We want to know if it's solid and appropriate to climb on. So our protocol is two climbers look at every tree before anyone ascends, and we double load before climbing. So Carson's going to get set up on that. He's got his stationary rope system. He's got his working rope for up above. I think you're going to work moving rope? Moving rope, sweet. So getting back to using this access line, one, it goes up, two, it comes down. And where you're going to see us use this at the end of this talk is that when he's ready to descend, while still up high in the canopy, he's going to pull out that other working line. He'll transfer back to the access line, pull out the other working line, because it's a lot easier to retrieve when you're 20 or 30 feet from your tie-in point than if you're 100 feet down on the ground and you're hoping like hell that thing pulls out. Who's gotten gear stuck in a tree before? Who's lying and didn't raise their hand? Totally, it happens though, right? It happens. And so one of the ways that we've found to reduce the number of times that we get gear stuck in the tree is we retrieve our high tie-in point from the access line. That way, if it doesn't come out easily, we're that much closer and able to address it. It's a way to improve efficiency. And we have to remember that the energy that we spend on the job is physical. I'm ready when you are. Let's do it. Is physical as well as mental. When we have stress in our work, that manifests itself as using up energy. Our brain consumes a huge amount of our blood glucose, right? It's the most demanding organ. And if our minds are running and running and running, trying to deal with difficult situations, trying to manage stress, our physical energy will come down over time as well, and we won't make as good decisions, we won't be as effective, we won't make as good a cuts. So anytime we can reduce stress, that improves or increases the amount of energy we have left to do our work. All right, so Carson's gonna ascend, being very careful of the really sharp rig eye terminations there. Nice. All right, so he's ascending and he is bringing his other line with him. Certainly he could have had me tie it on here, but if we're out on the job site, I can be doing other things. I can get saws fueled, I can get cleanup tools out, I can be moving Mrs. Jones' flower pot and the bird bath. He is self-sufficient at this point, but we always want to stay in communication in case something happens. Has anyone ever had an unexpected outcome while you were making that initial ascent in the tree, found something that you did not expect? What have you found? There was a crack. Yep. How about a cavity on the back side? Who's ever found that? Yep, bees. Yeah, who's encountered bees in a tree before, hornets? These things happen, right? So we want to make sure that anybody you're on a job site is in visual or voice communication anytime we have somebody climbing. All right, so Carson has moved up. He has his access point. Now he's going to advance his tie-in point, and he's going to then abandon that access line. It's there for rescue, and it's there that he can use it as a second rope in the tree for work positioning if he has need or reason to do that. So let's go through our tips so far. 1, use a high quality handsaw. Don't drag the chainsaw through the whole tree. Number 2, practice with throw line. Get good at it. Get confident with it so that you can stand there, look at a target, throw for it, and in a couple of throws, have a good tie-in point to start from. Number 3 that we're just talking about now, install an access line. It gives you access up into the crown. It provides or facilitates rescue, and it enables an easy way to come down and go back up if you're gonna have lunch. Crazy, or let's be honest, right? Use the bathroom. Like, holy cow, okay, use the chip truck. Let me use the right terminology here, right? But when you gotta use the chip truck, you can get down and get back up. And he could leave his work positioning system in place. All right, so Carson's got his climb line, he's gonna adjust. Which tie-in point are you gonna hit up there? Perfect. All right, so he's in position, making sure that he is secured and stable. And what I want you to know is that what he's climbing on, and what I've got here on my harness, this is literally our work gear. We didn't show up with a bunch of brand new things from manufacturers saying, you should check this out, it's wonderful and I've never used it. This is what we work on every day, and this is how we work. I want you to have advice that comes from work in the field, not from the marketing department. Is that fair? All right, so Carson's setting up his tie-in point. 4th tip that we're gonna talk about, and we're gonna go into some detail on this, is improving work positioning. Improving work positioning. Climbing is only how we commute. Who gets paid to climb? If you just climb up, swing around the canopy and come down, do you get paid for what you did? No, I don't get paid for that either. I get paid for the work that I accomplish. And where is the work that we need to do? It's out in the tips and up in the top, right? So we get paid for the work that we accomplish, and we use climbing to get there. So we have to be efficient, and then we have to position ourselves in a way that facilitates doing high quality work with the lowest investment of energy. So that's choosing a good work plan, but also routing your rope properly and supporting yourself so you can make high quality cuts. Improving that work positioning. I like to think that efficient climbing really is the endless pursuit of better work positioning. And I want to share with you a few ideas of what that might include. One, choosing a high tie-in point, right? An appropriately high tie-in. Is it possible to be too high in the tree? Yeah? What happens if you're tied in too high, or what might happen? Right? Because what's the weakest part of your climbing system? The anchor, the tree, the primary suspension point. That's the weak point. It's not our gear. We don't hear about people breaking ropes and breaking harnesses and breaking carabiners. We hear about people breaking trees. So we need to choose an appropriately high tie-in point, and you have to know your species, and you have to consider the tree condition. So that's one way we improve work positioning. Second one is planning our route and making sure that we're improving our rope angle wherever we can. All right, so Karsten, let's imagine we need to make a pruning cut out here in the tip. Yeah, let's make a pruning cut over here. And we sort of set this up to make a point. I realize that where he's tied in may or may not be the best tie-in point for the tree, but it's sort of illustrative of what you're talking about here. So if we look at Karsten's rope angle, he's already at, what, 45 degrees outside of vertical? Would we agree? 45-ish? All right, and so if you need now to reach out and make a good pruning cut out there, let's see what that takes. Whoa, wait a minute. What's so difficult about what he's doing? What is making this difficult? The rope angle, right? He's not supported from above, he's being pulled to the side. Who's a rock climber in this room? Who's done some rock climbing? I see a few people I know. In rock climbing, there's a term called a barn door. A barn door is where all of your connection points are in one plane, and you can tip side to side. And what you saw Karsten do there was starting to barn door. Anytime we're tied in, we want to use our climbing line and our lanyard to create a triangle. Between our feet, our climb line, and our lanyard, 3 points of contact, dispersed or distributed, create stability. The steeper that rope angle, the more away from vertical that rope angle, the harder it is to be stable. So how could Karsten improve his work positioning? What could he do? Ooh, he might be able to use the access line. Good, you're getting ahead of me. What else could he do with a single rope? A redirect, a re-D. If you're really cool, I understand the word is now a re-D. But a redirect, right? He could redirect his rope. So how could he redirect a moving rope system? There are a few different ways. What might he do? He could do a dragon tail, cool. How about simpler than that? Say again? He could do an M system. I'm gonna go real simple here. He could pass his rope through a union. All right, Karsten, let's do this. Lanyard in, let's pass your rope through that union. Ooh, yeah, that'd be perfect. Let's do that. And let's look at some pros and cons of different redirects that he might use. I promise you that what I'm gonna show you is not rocket science. Ryan Torsicola will show you way cooler stuff. But I think this is fundamental, and we have to understand what our choices are. All right, so he's pulling slack into his system so that then he can pass it through a union. All right, so he's gonna clip back, excellent. What's the downside of this type of a redirect? Friction. Is friction bad? It depends. Who saw any of the aerial friction presentations yesterday, right? Depends whether you want it or don't. Maybe this is the right thing for him, maybe not. Okay, so he's got a lot of friction, but he's definitely improved his rope angle, wouldn't you agree? All right, let's look at another way he might do this. I saw Taylor Hamill one time set up a redirect that was really simple, that triangulates the position. I want to share that with you. Instead of passing his whole system through, we're going to have him only pass one part of the rope. We're going to have him pass through the termination, the eye-spliced end. Who's familiar with the ponytail redirect? Has anybody seen this before? The ability to raise the system up, pull it back through the union. All right, so Karsten, pass the spliced eye through there, and let's show what that looks like. This is a simple way to triangulate your position and create more stability. Notice how he's making sure his rope isn't twisted. We were talking about friction. Twisting the two parts of rope increases friction in your system. Now, is this the right answer for everything? No, of course not. But it creates an opportunity to utilize tools already in your system, no additional hardware, to triangulate his position. So by passing the termination end of the rope through a union, he is effectively triangulated and is stable in the tree and can adjust himself back and forth. It has a little bit of that feel of the M system, just a little bit less hardware. Right, so that would be an option for him. How could we eliminate the friction? What could he do instead? He could, Doug says he could climb SRT. Yep, certainly an option. He could use a friction management device of some sort. So, Karsten, I think you got a pinto on your harness, or you got a pulley of some sort? All right, so let's set this up with lower friction. The first two redirect options we looked at there enabled him to improve his work positioning, but at a cost. There was a high cost of friction. Now, they were super simple. He didn't need to use anything else. But if he's going to work for any extended period, he really wants to take that friction out to save energy, to be more efficient. That's our whole objective, isn't it? How do we work more efficiently? So, what Karsten's going to set up is a redirect that separates the two parts of his rope using a pinto and a carabiner. It's ideal for a moving rope. You could certainly use it in stationary too, but it allows you to separate two parts of rope in a relatively simple way. And what I really like about it is he doesn't have to pass anything through the union. It's all underneath. So he's going to use a sling. I'm talking and he's working. All right. So he's got good, stable position there, lanyarded in. He's going to get his sling, pinto, and carabiner off his harness. Who carries extra slings on your harness? Who carries extra slings that are dedicated to life support? It's really important that we recognize what is life support and what is not. And I want to share a quick thought with you. If you have carabiners on your harness, I see these in gear inspections and somebody says, oh, that's only for rigging. That's only for this. But how many times have we been in a position where it's awkward and the only thing you can reach is on this side? You pull it and you go, oh man, that's the one that doesn't work right. What do I do with that? I encourage you to make sure that whatever you use on your harness is in good condition and is inspected regularly. All right, so Karsten has the carabiner up in the tree, the carabiner and sling, and let me grab, I got some gear back here. I'll do a mini version of this down below. We have two parts of rope. This is the anchor. The first part of rope is going to lay in the pinto. The second part goes inside the carabiner. So that you have two parts of rope independently passing through the hardware with very low friction. One on the sheave of the pulley and one on the carabiner. So now Karsten's been able to redirect his moving rope system and can get out to his tie-in point, get out to his working location with a minimum amount of friction. He's using the structure of the tree to reduce the amount of energy that he puts into his work, because that's the objective. So in this group, how many of us have been climbing more than a decade? Are you like me that you wake up in the morning and things hurt that didn't used to hurt? Yeah. And it increases over time. And one of the things I've found is that my motivation to find better, smoother, simpler ways has gone up the more that things hurt in the morning. Now, if you take care of yourselves, you will extend your careers. You will get to do more of what you love. Who wants to climb more and climb longer? Absolutely, absolutely. And by being smart about what we do in the tree, choosing our equipment, choosing our techniques, increasing the scale of our toolkit, the number of tools and techniques we have at our disposal, we will extend our careers. So here's one thing that Karsten has done that many people don't think about. When moving through the tree, we need to manage the tail of our rope. And what do we tend to do? We tend to just start pulling it through the tree and letting this belly down and feeding it through, and you end up with this pile of rope on the ground. Who's had that problem? It's tangled up in the brush, and you need the ground person to untangle it and move the rake and get it off of the lamp. So what Karsten's done, he's created what's called a lap coil. A lap coil. He's created bites of rope that go over his legs. You can do it over a lanyard, you can do it over a tree branch, and he is stacking the rope. He's feeding it down tail first. I'll say that again. He's feeding the rope down tail first, which means that when the whole rope is on the ground and he needs more rope out of it, he's pulling off the top of the pile rather than the bottom. And if we just toss it out of the tree, it ends up a mess. It doesn't come out efficiently, it ends up knotted. By creating that lap coil and then feeding the rope down, he manages the rope, he reduces the amount of time that we all put into dealing with it, has fewer problems, less stress, and uses less energy. Excellent. Can you set that up one more time? Show people how you did it? So he's pulling up bites of rope. We're creating coils. And the first ones he pulls up will be longer. The later ones will be smaller so they don't tangle. This is a great technique to make life in the tree easier. So a lap coil. All right, so when he goes to feed that down, go ahead and feed it back out now. We can see it come out. It just feeds out the way you need it, rather than making a mess. All right, there you go. Oh, and if you had a little bit more height, the rope actually feeds itself down. All right, so we've got your work position improved. All right, can you get out and make that pruning cut for us now? Yeah, much better rope angle. Previously, he was at what, maybe 45 degrees? What's he at now? 15? Much less energy going into holding his position. He can get lanyarded in, be supported, and make a high quality cut. Whether it is a pruning cut, whether he's setting up rigging, removing, whatever it might be, by improving his rope angle, improving his position, he uses less energy, both mentally and physically, to complete his work. And he's going to do higher quality work in the process. Because we've all gotten to that point at the end of the day, or maybe it's the end of the morning, where we're already getting tired and the quality of our cuts goes down, right? That happens to me. Who else does that happen to? When we get tired, our work is not as good. We're not as careful, we're not as precise. Things go wrong. So if we can keep our energy high, if we can keep our minds sharp, we can work better. So earlier, somebody here in the front row, when we were talking about work positioning, what did you say? Use your access line. So Karsten has an opportunity in the tree. He has two different ropes. He can use them both. So he has his access line. Now, he can improve his positioning or move through the tree by transferring from one rope to the other. Now, obviously, we're in a very small tree here. It doesn't provide a really great example. But the concept is, remember that you have a second rope. Now, there is a cost. It's not necessarily immediately accessible for rescue, but he's improved his positioning, he's improved his security. He can now triangulate his position using multiple lines. How many times do we need to be tied in when making a chainsaw cut? Say it one more time. How many? 2, absolutely. How many times is Karsten tied in right now? 2. So there's lots of benefits to using a second rope. Please. Great. Question here down front is back in the day, right? Air quotes, back in the day, Was the access line a stationary rope or a moving rope? From my own experience, we started using access lines in the age of stationary rope climbing. Now, if we were to go way back, I would imagine for people who were proficient with footlocking, they could leave that footlock line in place. I don't know if anybody did. It's a great question. For us, it's generally stationary, right? There's no reason it couldn't be a moving rope, but stationary provides some big advantages. Great question. One of the great philosophical questions of tree work, and he asked, if both ropes are connected to one bridge, isn't that only one attachment point? You and I are going to have a beer later and talk about that, because there's no way I can answer it here, but I think you're right. I think you're right. Excellent question. And to what we were talking about earlier, we have to think critically about what we're doing, don't we? And not just take things as gospel because it's what we've seen or what we've been told. We have to continue accumulating knowledge. And I want to compliment all of you and your companies for making it possible for you to be here at TCI Expo, because you are in the process of absorbing new information. You're going to see things you like, you're going to see things you don't like, things you want to try, things you don't want to do anymore, but you're constantly adding new information into your toolkit and thinking critically about what we're doing. I'm glad you brought it up. All right, so, work positioning. Let's talk about getting out of the tree. I know this sounds crazy. Getting down seems like a pretty simple task, but I want to reiterate the importance of using your access line as part of your descent system. We tend to think about ascending a lot, but we don't think about descending. So, Karsten, let's do this. Let's get you in position to retrieve your redirect, pull your system, and then descend. Now, when we're removing a tree, coming down is sort of like when the tree is gone, right? But when we're doing pruning, when we are preserving and retaining trees, maybe we need to think a little bit more about it. When we get gear stuck in a tree, when we go to pull out that friction saver or pull out those redirects, what are the kinds of things that cause us to get stuck? Where do we have problems? What causes problems? One that comes to mind for me is narrow unions, right? Narrow unions. What's another issue? Sprouts, suckers, yeah, absolutely. Multiple redirects. Doug's a big stationary rope guy. Pulling multiple redirects can be challenging. So the more we can be thoughtful about planning our descent, the easier this whole thing can be. So another challenge in descending is, what is the surface below us? Are we working over Mrs. Jones' flagstone patio or Mr. Smith's greenhouse, where we can't just pull our ring and ring out of the tree and let it fall? Maybe we're in a position where we need to capture or collect that hardware, bring it down, so the only thing coming out of the tree is textile. So in this situation, let's assume that what's underneath here is something we cannot drop hardware on. So Karsten's going to set himself up, moving back to the access line and retrieving his work positioning system from above. It will enable him to control all that hardware before descending out of the tree. All right, so he's collected his redirect. He's got that put away. Who's left a redirect in the tree before? It's not just Doug and I, is it? Oh, there's somebody back. So 3 of us have left redirects in the tree. Okay, a few more. Yeah, I know of one sling that I left up in the tree. It was 140 feet and I just didn't go get it. I was like, you know what? It just ain't worth it. Because all the lines were on the ground by that point, right? We make these decisions. All right, so Karsten's moved back to the center of the tree. He's going to go back onto his access line. Notice we use the term access line, not ascent line. This line has so many different purposes. All right, he's back on it. He's tested it. I'm going to inspect the anchor, making sure it wasn't damaged in any way during work. Nope, we're good. All right, so now he's able to pull his system from above, collect all of that hardware, and either lower it down or bring it down with him.